Dear friends, I'm ready to take you on an unforgettable journey to a fascinating corner of history, the depths of Anglo-Saxon Britain. Let's dive into the mysterious secrets of these ancient lands and trace the lost stories from throughout history. Imagine, in the remnants of a civilization that once shone under the grandeur of Rome, new seeds of an era were being sown. In the dark days of the 5th century, the grand structures of the Roman Empire had crumbled, and the island's lands were being reshaped by the brave Anglo-Saxon tribes coming from the north. This was when the doors to one of history's most intriguing periods were opening. Close your eyes and take a deep breath. Picture yourself in the midst of an Anglo-Saxon village on a foggy morning, with cold winds blowing around you. Around you, the voices of warrior like people echo as they work to rebuild the old world amidst a great transformation. Now, amidst these ancient remnants, we'll begin to feel the spirit of Anglo-Saxon Britain, emerging from the dusty shelves of time. As we gather around the fire, I'll take you through every detail of the rise of Anglo-Saxon Britain, from the establishment of these lands to their cultural and societal transformation. We'll explore everything from brave leaders and the challenges of village life to wars and the evolution of religious beliefs. We'll let each event and character from the past touch your life, as if you were stepping right into history. So rise, open your eyes, and prepare to embark on a journey into this captivating period of history. If you're ready, let's start this exploration into the depths of the past, right here in Anglo-Saxon Britain. Dear friends, we're about to step into the dark shadows of the final days of the mighty Roman Empire. Imagine how one of the greatest and most powerful empires of the ancient world slowly weakened and collapsed. This is a story of transformation that not only changed Rome but also dramatically altered the history of Britain. The Roman Empire once dominated the world with its immense military power and cultural richness. However, after centuries of wars, internal strife, and economic troubles, the foundations of this colossal empire began to crumble. It was a time when Rome's power was no longer felt in every corner, and the empire's borders were shrinking. Britain, to the north of the island, became one of Rome's most distant and fragile outposts. Let's take a look at a lost era in the dusty pages of history, the final days of the Roman Empire. In 410 AD, as Rome's own capital was helpless against external attacks, its influence over the provinces of Britain began to wane. Massive defensive structures like Hadrian's Wall had been built on Rome's northern frontier, but even these enormous walls couldn't stop the weakening power of Rome. The fall of the Roman Empire had a huge impact on Britain. Cities were destroyed, roads and bridges fell into ruin. Without Rome's strong protection, barbarian tribes from all corners of Britain began to trouble the island's inhabitants. Germanic, Pictish, and Scottish raids filled the vacuum left by Rome. These successive invasions marked the beginning of a transformative period that deeply affected the island's future. Britain's departure from Roman rule initiated a significant transformation in the region's political and cultural structure. A new Britain was emerging, one that was charting its own course away from Roman dominance. During this time, competition and conflicts between local tribes intensified. The cities and structures left behind by Rome evolved into settlements that planted the seeds for a new era. The rich cultural heritage of Rome blended with Britain's ancient traditions to create a new identity. In the dark days when Rome's splendor ended, barbarian invasions from all parts of Britain began to swiftly erase Rome's legacy. However, the void left by Rome wasn't only filled by local tribes, but also by new immigrants from distant lands. This is where the Anglo-Saxons come into the picture. Once coming from the coastal regions of northern Germany, Denmark, and the Netherlands, these brave and adventurous migrants made a grand sea journey to reach Britain's shores. This journey was not just a geographical shift, but also a cultural revolution. The Anglo-Saxons arrived on the island like a wind from beyond the seas. ready to transform Britain's long-standing structure. Picture the scene: ships rising above the sea and crowds filled with seafarers approaching Britain's shores. Despite harsh weather and perilous sea journeys, the Anglo-Saxons pressed on with determination to step onto these new lands. These immigrants eagerly reached Britain's coasts, seeking new settlements, land, and a fresh start. When the Anglo-Saxons arrived in Britain, they quickly developed strategies to fill the void left after the Roman era. They began reshaping the cities, villages, and lands abandoned by Rome. They established settlements along the northern and eastern coasts and rapidly laid the foundations of their own cultural and political structures. The new settlements built on the ruins of old Roman cities profoundly changed the island's cultural and social fabric. As they settled in Britain, the Anglo-Saxons took advantage of the region's natural beauty and agricultural potential. Forests, valleys, and fertile lands provided an ideal environment for them to build new lives. These migrants, bringing their traditions, languages, and cultural values to the island, quickly integrated into Britain's social fabric. They built their own villages and towns, created local governance structures, and began to spread across Britain. This migration was not just about acquiring land, but also about cultural exchange. The settlement of the Anglo-Saxons in Britain added a new layer to the old Roman culture and traditions. The traces left by ancient Rome, combined with the Anglo-Saxon cultural heritage, led to the creation of a new historical texture. The new settlements across Britain became places where Anglo-Saxon traditions, legal systems, and social structures prevailed. Dear friends, we are stepping into one of the most colorful and rich periods of our history. I'm going to tell you about how the four great kingdoms of Anglo-Saxon Britain, Kent, Mercia, Northumbria, and Wessex developed their political and military strategies, how their kings and queens ruled, and how they shaped the destiny of the island. Get ready, as this story is about the brave kings and queens and their struggles filled with strategic intelligence and courage. First, let's embark on a journey through the political and military strategies of these four kingdoms. The Kingdom of Kent was known for its strategic location and strong leadership. Kent was established on the former territories of the Roman Empire, which gave it an advantage by utilizing the infrastructure left behind by the Romans. King Ethelbert was not only a ruler but also a strategist. He placed great importance on diplomacy to protect and expand his lands. By forming alliances with other kingdoms in the region, Ethelbert achieved a strong position both militarily and commercially. Kent's central location provided opportunities to strengthen its relationships with neighboring kingdoms. Under King Ethelbert's rule, Kent developed a robust trade network, enhancing its wealth and power. Now let's look at Mercia's rich lands and strategic intelligence. Mercia was known for its vast territories and strong army. King Penda followed a careful strategy to boost the region's military power. Penda executed a series of clever military maneuvers to weaken his enemies. Especially in conflicts with neighboring kingdoms, Penda's leadership made Mercia a formidable military force. During King Offa's reign, Mercia's military and political power reached its peak. Offa not only strengthened Mercia militarily but also developed it economically and culturally. Offa's dike, a defensive wall built to protect Mercia's borders, showcases how effective Offa's military strategies were. The Kingdom of Northumbria, thanks to its strategic position in the north, gained significant military and cultural power. Under King Oswald, Northumbria became known for its military strategies and religious reforms. Oswald developed an effective defense strategy against Viking raids from the north and led efforts to spread Christianity in the region. During King Alfred the Great's reign, Northumbria achieved great success with its defense strategies against the Vikings. Alfred protected Northumbria with his resistance to Viking raids and strategic intelligence, strengthening its relations with other parts of the island. The kingdom of Wessex, especially under King Alfred the Great's leadership, achieved great success in military and political strategies. Alfred was known for his resistance to Viking raids and protected Wessex with his military strategies. He implemented many military reforms to strengthen defensive lines and ensure peace in the region. Alfred also developed an effective governance approach to address internal issues, contributing to Wessex's strength. Even after Alfred's death, Wessex continued to be a strong kingdom, and the foundations of the island's unified kingdoms were laid here. Dear friends, the role of the kings and queens of Anglo-Saxon Britain was not limited to military strategies. Each kingdom established its own governance style and internal organization. The kings of Kent, Mercia, Northumbria, and Wessex shaped the island's history by creating strong governance in their regions. Kent's early kings, like Ethelbert, made important reforms as both a religious and political figure. Mercia's Penda and Offa expanded and protected the region with their military acumen. Northumbria's Oswald and Alfred defended their lands with religious and military reforms. Wessex's Alfred made a significant impact with both military and administrative reforms. Dear friends, now I'm going to present you with a story from the dusty pages of time. A story that will shed light on the depths of Anglo-Saxon Britain, the intricacies of its society, and the various layers of life. Let's embark on a journey to explore this ancient world together and delve into the complex yet fascinating details of its societal structure. Imagine once upon a time, vast green fields, stone-built villages, and large stone remnants covering all corners of Britain. In these lands, there were three fundamental classes in Anglo-Saxon society: the aristocracy, serfs, and freemen. Each played a distinct role within the gears of this ancient society. Let's examine these social layers one by one and lose ourselves in the depths of our history. First, let's take a look at the majestic world of the aristocracy. In Anglo-Saxon Britain, the aristocracy was the class of nobles and the royal family. These wealthy and powerful individuals were considered landowners and held both economic and political power. Aristocrats typically owned large estates and lavish manor houses, and they played significant roles in regional governance. An aristocrat was not just a landowner but also a protector and ruler of their region. During the time of King Alfred the Great, aristocrats were spread across the island, each responsible for maintaining justice and security in their own territories. The life of aristocrats encompassed a grand existence in their large manors. In these grand homes, extended families gathered around fireplaces to make decisions about regional governance and come together for grand feasts. Aristocrats also played crucial roles in wars, with obligations to provide soldiers and protection, making them key players in military strategies. Now let's move to the serfs, who were immediately below the aristocracy but formed the backbone of society. Serfs made up the largest segment of Anglo-Saxon society. Working the land, often on estates owned by aristocrats or the church, these individuals led a harsh life. Serfs worked long hours in the fields and gave a substantial portion of their produce to their landowners. Most serfs were born into serfdom, and their social mobility was very limited, meaning they often had to work on the same estates throughout their lives. However, life for serfs wasn't just full of hardships. Some could earn their freedom after many years of service, and some serf families could improve their social status through relationships with landowners. Serfs' lives were shaped by intense social interactions within their villages. They were an important part of the social network, actively participating in local festivals, religious ceremonies, and other community events. And now let's discuss the lowest stratum of society, the freemen and peasants. These individuals occupied a transitional phase between the aristocrats and serfs. While freemen had some property rights, they were generally in a more challenging economic position. However, some freemen could own their own land and express themselves freely. Often peasants made a living by working small plots of land and trading at local markets. The structure of Anglo-Saxon society created both solidarity and competition among peasants. Each village had its own dynamics and social relationships. This lowest stratum of society typically lived in self-sufficient villages, leading simple yet functional lives. Religious and social activities strengthened the social bonds in these villages. Dear friends, the social structure of Anglo-Saxon Britain presents a fascinating tableau with its complexity and depth. From the grandeur of the aristocracy to the hard lives of the serfs and the modest yet significant roles of the freemen, each layer is a vital part of this historical mosaic. Each contributed to the social and cultural fabric of Anglo-Saxon Britain, reflecting the richness and diversity of this ancient world. Dear friends, now I will take you on a journey deep into the heart of Anglo-Saxon Britain. Imagine how rich and vibrant life could be amidst the land, the scent of wood, and the smoke. In this ancient era, we'll explore how people's daily lives and social norms were intertwined with art and craftsmanship. Daily life in Anglo-Saxon Britain was shaped by great ritual and detail. Each morning, the life awakening in the village streets spread like a natural melody. In the early hours, the light filtering through the windows of stone-walled homes illuminated the interiors, while the clinking of pots on stone-paved hearths created the first sounds of the day. These sounds marked the beginning of the morning rituals of this ancient society. Daily life was closely tied to agriculture and animal husbandry. Tasks such as working the land, growing fruits and vegetables, and raising livestock were hard but essential activities that kept villagers busy from early morning until late at night. This process was central to both the community and individual lives. Landowners and villagers practiced traditional farming methods, grew their own food, and strengthened social bonds by sharing it. Anglo-Saxon society was a world filled with social norms. Family ties, roles and duties within the community, moral values, and traditions shaped these norms. Every individual took on a designated social role and tried to fulfill it to the best of their ability. Family relationships, in particular, formed the foundation of social norms. At home, women took care of cooking, child-rearing, and household chores, while men were generally involved in farming, hunting, and warfare. However, these roles could change over time, allowing flexibility within the social structure. Now let's explore the importance of art and craftsmanship in Anglo-Saxon society alongside daily life. Art was deeply woven into every aspect of this society, becoming an inseparable part of daily life. Textile production, metalworking, and jewelry making were fundamental elements of the artistic and cultural expressions of the time. Textile arts held a significant place in Anglo-Saxon Britain. Women wove colorful wool at home to produce beautiful fabrics, used in both everyday clothing and special ceremonial garments. Sewing and weaving skills were directly linked to social status. Women inherited these skills as a family tradition and passed them down through generations. The colorful and patterned fabrics reflected the society's aesthetic sensibilities and artistic talents. Metalworking was another prominent craft of the era. Blacksmithing and metalworking played a crucial role in creating tools and weapons needed for both warfare and daily life. The sounds of hammers and anvils echoed through the heart of the villages as artisans produced iron swords, armor, and tools. Metalworking was notable not only for its practical function, but also for its artistic elegance. Armor, in particular, was adorned with intricate craftsmanship and decorations, becoming some of the most valuable items of the time. And finally, jewelry. Anglo-Saxon society was quite creative with jewelry. Jewelry made from silver, gold, and various precious stones expressed personal beauty and social status. Jewelry often symbolized personal expression and wealth and was used in significant social events and ceremonies. Jewelry making was a skill requiring both craftsmanship and artistry. Each piece included customized details and symbols. So, dear friends, the daily life and artistic understanding of Anglo-Saxon Britain reveal both the simple and complex aspects of the society. This era, where agriculture, family relationships, social norms, and artistic production were intertwined, presented a life both challenging and fascinating. Every detail uncovers the richness and diversity of this ancient world, carrying the traces of the past into the present. Dear friends, once upon a time, the lands of Britain were alive with the rhythms of gods and nature. As the shadows of the old pagan era gradually faded, a new light was emerging: Christianity. As this light spread from villages to towns, from mountains to valleys, churches and monasteries became the epicenter of this transformation. Now, how about we dive deep into these sacred structures and explore the impact of Christianity on social life? Imagine in the gloomy forests of ancient Britain, life was filled with old pagan rituals and ceremonies. But now a new era had begun on this land. Christianity spread like a powerful wave across Britain, replacing the pagan beliefs. At the heart of this transformation, churches and monasteries shone like beacons, guiding the lives of the people. With the arrival of the first Christian missionaries in Britain, the churches built in place of the old pagan temples became the spiritual centers of the land. Churches were not only places of worship but also became an important part of social life. In these new places of worship, the traces of old pagan rituals slowly faded away, and the fundamental beliefs of Christianity began to take root. In addition to churches, monasteries were among the most important and influential structures of this period. Monasteries were not only places for religious worship, but also centers for education and cultural life. In these monasteries, where the roots of old pagan rituals and traditions were dug out, Christian knowledge and values were taught. Monastic life was crucial for preserving both spiritual and worldly knowledge and culture. Monasteries across Britain functioned as both spiritual and intellectual centers. These monasteries were places where priests and monks read sacred texts, prayed, and pondered theology. Significant advances were made in the arts and sciences. Manuscripts were preserved, ancient books were maintained, and new texts were written. In the peaceful gardens of monasteries, plants were grown, patients were treated, and spiritual purification was achieved. The spread of Christianity also deeply affected the social structure of Britain. Churches became not only places of worship but also centers for education and social order. Christianity permeated every aspect of social life. As new churches and monasteries were built, they replaced old pagan worship sites. These structures began to establish social norms, provide education, and spread cultural values. The new beliefs brought by Christian missionaries to these lands caused profound changes in the daily lives of the people. Pagan ceremonies and rituals were replaced by Christian prayers and worship. Old pagan festivals were transformed into sacred days in the Christian calendar. Easter, Christmas, and other Christian holidays replaced old pagan celebrations and merged with new rituals and observances. The role of churches and monasteries in Britain's religious and cultural life had a deep impact on the region's history. Christianity became not just a belief system but also a shaper of social life and cultural structure. Churches and monasteries shone as the spiritual and intellectual lights of the period. Gradually, as the old pagan roots were left behind, Christianity spread throughout every corner of Britain and solidified its place in the historical stage. Dear friends, thus, the encounter of Britain with Christianity and the effects of this new belief system left a significant mark on the history of these lands. Churches and monasteries became the most important structures of this transformation, holding their place in history. These sacred structures were not only centers of religious worship but also sources of cultural and intellectual light. Dear friends, in the grand flow of time, observing the significant changes in language and education in the lands of Britain takes us on a journey into the depths of ancient eras. In Anglo-Saxon Britain, The evolution of language and educational systems profoundly impacted both daily life and intellectual pursuits. This story is a unique reflection of how powerful words and letters can shape the course of history. In Anglo-Saxon Britain, the everyday language of the people was Old English, or Anglo-Saxon. This language was used in all aspects of life, from heroic tales and legends to daily conversations and legal texts. Old English echoed through wooden houses, marketplaces, and royal palaces. It formed the foundation of Britain's cultural fabric, reflecting the identity and lifestyle of its people. However, during this period, Latin also played a significant role, especially in churches and monasteries. As the legacy of the Roman Empire, Latin reached Britain and was used as the primary language in education, theology, and administration. Knowing Latin opened the doors to being part of an elite intellectual and religious community. Latin was not only the language of the Roman Empire, but also the universal language of science and learning. With the influence of churches and monasteries, Latin became central to the educational system in Britain. In educational institutions, Latin was taught, particularly in theology and classical literature. Priests and monks used this language to read sacred texts, perform religious rituals, and write academic works. The dominant role of Latin in education was a key tool for sharing knowledge and passing it on to new generations. However, this situation also affected the daily life of the people. The dominance of Latin in education and church life created a divide in language learning. On one side was Old English, spoken by the general populace, and on the other was Latin, used by the elite and educated classes. This created a social and cultural divide in Britain. Old English was widespread among the masses, while Latin held a special place among the elites, symbolizing knowledge and power. The role of Latin in education was not limited to preserving religious texts and scientific writings. Latin also brought many classical texts and works related to Greek-Roman culture to Britain. These works enriched the cultural and intellectual heritage of Anglo-Saxon Britain. Priests and monks, by reading and interpreting these works in Latin, worked to preserve classical knowledge and pass it on to future generations. From another perspective, the relationship between Old English and Latin created a kind of linguistic hierarchy in Britain's educational and cultural life. Old English had a broad usage in daily life, while Latin found its place mainly in academic and religious contexts. This distinction also led to linguistic and cultural interaction. Some words and concepts in Old English were borrowed from Latin, resulting in a linguistic exchange. The interaction between these two languages in Britain left lasting effects on both education and social structure. Old English shaped the daily life and cultural identity of the people, while Latin became the fundamental tool for knowledge and education. The coexistence of these two languages played a crucial role in shaping Britain's intellectual and cultural heritage. Dear friends, thus, we reveal the rich and complex landscape of the language and education world in Anglo-Saxon Britain. The roles of Latin and Old English in these lands took their places in history as linguistic and cultural bridges. The power and impact of a language are measured not just by words, but also by its deep effects on people's lives and social structures. Dear friends, let's take a look into the intellectual world of Anglo-Saxon Britain. In these lands, education and literature played a crucial role in spreading knowledge and keeping the cultural memory of the people alive. Behind every word and sentence, there's a deep historical and cultural heritage. Educational institutions and church schools shone like beacons in preserving and passing on this heritage to new generations. In Anglo-Saxon Britain, educational institutions and church schools were at the heart of the quest for knowledge and wisdom. These places not only provided religious education but also made significant contributions to science, literature, and the arts. Churches and monasteries were sacred spaces where knowledge was preserved and shared, serving as the center of both education and cultural life. Church schools were the backbone of the education system. In these schools, young people learned Latin and were taught to read and write sacred texts. Since education was largely centered around religious topics, Latin played a significant role alongside religious rituals and theology. The education provided in church schools not only increased individuals' religious knowledge, but also contributed to their social and intellectual development. In addition to educational institutions, literature and poetry played an important role in the cultural life of Anglo-Saxon Britain. The most significant literary work of this period is undoubtedly the epic poem Beowulf. This epic reflects the cultural and intellectual heritage of the Anglo-Saxon era and is considered one of the most important literary works of all time. Beowulf presents a story full of heroism and adventure. The hero Beowulf's battles against monsters, his heroics, and his acts of selflessness are the cornerstone of this epic. But Beowulf is not just a story of heroism, it also reveals the values, beliefs, and social structure of Anglo-Saxon society. Beowulf's struggles symbolize strength, courage, and sacrifice. His battles represent both personal and societal victories. Beowulf is not only an epic but also a teaching tool. The lessons and themes it contains reflect the ethical values and worldview of the Anglo-Saxon society. Each section of the poem encourages listeners and readers to think about heroism, honor, and moral values. It's believed that the epic was taught in educational institutions and memorized by students, helping them draw inspiration from these heroic stories to guide their own lives. Other significant works of Anglo-Saxon literature also reflect the cultural richness of the period. These works were often transmitted orally and served to keep the collective memory alive. Poems, stories, and legends were both a part of education and an integral part of everyday life. They combined the society's history and mythology, while also reflecting the values and beliefs of the people. It's important to note that church schools and educational institutions played a significant role in preserving and passing on these literary works. Priests and teachers worked to keep the cultural heritage alive by reading, interpreting, and teaching these texts. Literature and poetry were key components of the curriculum, teaching young people not only literacy but also the values and cultural heritage of their society. Dear friends, in this way we've explored the deep and rich world of education and literature in Anglo-Saxon Britain. Church schools and educational institutions didn't just ensure the transmission of knowledge, but also preserved the cultural and literary heritage of these lands. Beowulf and other literary works shed light on the spirit and values of the Anglo-Saxon society, illuminating the depths of history. Dear friends, today I'll take you on a journey through the justice system and legal understanding of Anglo-Saxon Britain. In these lands, justice was not only a reflection of laws but also of societal norms and traditions. For centuries, the Anglo-Saxon people developed a complex and deep legal system to ensure justice. Understanding the importance of this system for both individuals and society will give us valuable historical insight. In Anglo-Saxon Britain, the concept of justice was literally at the heart of people's lives. Every member of society played an active role in ensuring justice and enforcing laws. This shows that justice was not just a form of governance but a way of life. Let's take a closer look at this ancient legal system and its understanding of justice. Firstly, the Anglo-Saxon legal system was largely shaped by local traditions and the laws of the kingdoms. Each region and settlement developed its own rules and laws of justice. This meant that every community had its own sense of justice and operated according to local norms. However, these local laws had to be in line with the overarching laws of the kingdoms. This balance allowed justice to be maintained both locally and centrally. The Anglo-Saxon legal system used various methods to ensure justice and enforce laws. One such method was the wergild compensation system. This system required the offender to pay compensation to the victim or the victim's family. Wergild was seen as a monetary equivalent of the harm done to a person's life or health. This compensation was paid not only to the victim but also to the victim's family. This system helped in ensuring justice in both individual and societal terms. Another important feature was the ordeal method of trial. This method involved various physical tests and trials to determine the guilt or innocence of the accused. The ordeal was usually a test invoking divine judgment, with the results believed to be determined by the gods' justice. Tests included trials by fire, water, and other physical examinations. This method was considered a form of spiritual and physical testing to determine the truth of the accusations. An additional crucial element of the legal system was the court or local assemblies. In Anglo-Saxon Britain, courts were places where local communities came together to administer justice. In these courts, community members would gather to make decisions and enforce laws. Courts played a significant role in resolving local issues and implementing laws. Local leaders and wise individuals made decisions in these courts, which were supported by the community and served as a foundation for law enforcement. The Anglo-Saxon justice system was also based on societal norms and traditions. Every individual had a responsibility to contribute to the administration of justice. This meant that the entire society shared the responsibility for upholding justice. Societal norms and traditions played a crucial role in ensuring justice. Each person acted with an awareness of the impact of their actions on society and contributed to maintaining justice. In summary, the concept of justice in Anglo-Saxon Britain was shaped by both local traditions and central laws. This system allowed justice to be maintained both individually and collectively. Methods like wergild ordeals and local courts played significant roles in administering justice. Societal norms and traditions were also crucial in the application of justice. With this historical perspective, we gain a deeper understanding of how profound and effective the Anglo-Saxon approach to justice was. Dear friends, today I'll take you on a journey to explore the local governance and assemblies of Anglo-Saxon Britain. Here we'll see how justice and social order were maintained and how local governments and assemblies shaped the social structure. Anglo-Saxon Britain is noted for its unique approaches to local governance and community assemblies. The role these systems played in maintaining social order and justice is both impressive and instructive. In Anglo-Saxon Britain, local governments and assemblies were central to everyday life. Each kingdom had its own internal governance structure, which played a critical role in resolving local issues. Let's delve into how these local governments and assemblies operated. Firstly, let's look at the hundred system, one of the foundational elements of local governance. A hundred was a local administrative unit in rural England, covering a specific population and playing a significant role in administering justice. Each hundred encompassed about 100 households, and this community played an active role in maintaining justice and solving local issues. Each hundred was managed by a hundred court, where community members would gather to resolve local problems and administer justice. Another important local administrative unit was the wapentake. A wapentake generally covered a broader area and can be thought of as a larger version of the hundred courts. Wapentakes played a crucial role in maintaining justice and social order. These units were key in addressing local issues and enforcing societal norms. In Anglo-Saxon Britain, another vital component of local governance and assemblies was the moot or community meetings. Moots were gatherings where community members came together to discuss local issues. These meetings were held to administer justice, make local regulations, and resolve social problems. Moots were places where local people actively participated and made decisions about their community. At these meetings, anyone could voice their opinions and contribute to communal decisions. Moots played a significant role in maintaining social order and ensuring justice. The decisions made in these assemblies were based on the community's general acceptance, and were shaped according to local norms and traditions. Community assemblies functioned as a form of democratic participation in the administration of justice and resolution of local issues. In summary, the operation of local governments and assemblies in Anglo-Saxon Britain was crucial for maintaining social order and ensuring justice. The hundred and wapentake systems formed the foundational elements of local governance, addressing local issues effectively. Moots were gatherings where community members actively participated in decision-making. These local governance and assembly structures were fundamental to the social order and justice system of Anglo-Saxon Britain. Dear friends, now I invite you to dive into the depths of land ownership and taxation systems in Anglo-Saxon Britain and explore the impact of these ancient and fascinating systems on social and economic life. These lands were not only the foundation of wars and kingdoms, but also the cornerstones of economic and societal structure. Let's embark on a journey to understand how land ownership and tax systems functioned, how they were shaped, and how they affected society. In Anglo-Saxon Britain, land ownership was the foundation of the community's economic and social structure. Land was not only a place to live, but also a symbol of power and prestige. Owning land was considered a sign of wealth and power, making it extremely important. Each kingdom developed a complex system to manage land ownership, which directly impacted both the social structure and the economic order. Land ownership was typically organized in large estates or manors. Each manor was owned by a lord or noble, who was responsible for managing the land, collecting taxes, and ensuring justice. The land in manors was worked by local peasants and serfs. These peasants and serfs farmed the land, paid taxes to their lords, and provided for their own subsistence. Tax systems were another crucial part of the economic order in Anglo-Saxon Britain. The collection and management of revenues from landholdings were the responsibilities of both local and central authorities. Taxes were usually collected from the products, animals, and other resources derived from the land. Peasants and serfs had to pay various taxes to their lords, which could include agricultural products, animals, and other goods produced. However, paying taxes was not just a burden, it was also a part of maintaining social order. Taxes were used to fund community services and infrastructure. Lords used these taxes to maintain village roads, repair bridges, and support other communal needs. Additionally, tax payments influenced the relationship between lords and peasants. Tax systems played a critical role in shaping social and economic relationships. These tax systems were effective across all segments of society and played a significant role in the economic management of local administrations and kingdoms. Taxes were not only an economic burden but also a symbol of social order and solidarity. Land ownership and taxation systems shaped the economic and social structure of Anglo-Saxon Britain. Dear friends, now I will take you to a dark chapter in the history of Anglo-Saxon Britain, the Viking invasions, and the heroic struggles against them. This region experienced a period filled with great tales of heroism, written in golden letters in the pages of history books. Let's explore how the Vikings affected these lands and how Britain mounted its resistance. By the mid-9th century, the peaceful life of Anglo-Saxon Britain was about to be shaken by a fierce storm coming from the north. The Vikings, masters of the seas, set out from the cold North Sea to attack the coasts of Britain. These fierce warriors were Norse seafarers and traders from Scandinavia. Under the mighty sky, the Vikings, having completed their preparations in the harsh winds and depths of the northern seas, targeted Britain's weak points. These brave and fearless Vikings first landed on the coasts and then advanced into the interior, beginning to conquer the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. They plundered cities, burned and destroyed villages, and took the people captive. During this period, the Vikings even managed to advance as far south as England, bringing several important cities under Viking control. These attacks inflicted deep economic and social wounds on Britain. During this brutal period of history, kingdoms and lords were desperately forced to fight to protect their lands and people. However, amidst all this chaos, a figure emerged. This figure, with his courage and strategic genius, engraved his name in golden letters in history: Alfred the Great. King Alfred of Wessex stood out not only as a warrior but also as a visionary leader during this dark time when the Vikings threatened British lands. Alfred the Great developed a strong strategy to defend his kingdom and prepared a comprehensive plan to fight the Vikings. Alfred's defense strategy was built not only on the battlefield but also on enhancing his kingdom's defensive capacity strategically. He began by constructing a series of castles and fortifications to strengthen England's defenses. These fortresses became critical structures that slowed the Vikings' advance and bolstered the defense of his kingdom. Additionally, he coordinated regional militia forces and encouraged the people to defend their land by establishing a regular army. Alfred also waged a psychological war against the Vikings. He made significant efforts to undermine the Vikings' morale and boost the resilience of his people. This strategy managed to slow the Vikings' progress and gave Alfred the chance to protect the rest of his kingdom. Throughout this period, Alfred's leadership was marked not only by military but also by strategic and diplomatic skill. Ultimately, Alfred's resistance paid off. In 878, the defeat of the Viking leader Guthrum, due to the impact of Alfred's strategies, marked a turning point in British history. This victory limited the Vikings' influence over Britain and allowed the Kingdom of Wessex to regain strength. Alfred's successes turned him into not just a warrior but a legend. Dear friends, the story of the Viking invasions and Alfred the Great's heroism is not just a tale of war and resistance but also a symbol of freedom and courage. What happened during this period deeply affected the history of Britain and shaped the character of these lands. Alfred the Great's resistance and strategic genius will remain a success story written in golden letters in history books. Dear friends, let's now journey back to a pivotal moment in history, the year 1066, when the fate of Anglo-Saxon Britain was decided. This year was marked by a monumental transformation and an extraordinary struggle, with the Battle of Hastings being the centerpiece of this epic confrontation. The story behind the Norman conquest is nothing short of legendary. William, the powerful and ambitious Duke of Normandy, who is known to us as William the Conqueror, was burning with desire to claim the English throne. William believed that he should inherit the throne following the death of Anglo-Saxon King Edward in 1066, and took decisive steps to achieve this. However, after Edward's death, many contenders emerged for the vacant throne, creating significant uncertainty and rivalry in England. Following Edward's death, several contenders appeared to fill the vacant throne of England. One of these contenders was Harold Godwinson, a powerful Anglo-Saxon lord. Harold, as Edward's brother-in-law, claimed the throne as the new King of England. However, Harold's ascension to the throne enraged William. William argued that Edward had designated him as the rightful heir to the throne, and thus his claim had been violated. Consequently, William planned a massive military campaign to conquer England and claim the throne. And so, one of the greatest military campaigns in history was about to begin. William assembled a large army in Normandy. This army was not only made up of warriors but also included archers, cavalry, and engineers, forming a complex military force. By the autumn of 1066, a large fleet set sail from Normandy's ports toward the English shores, creating fear and excitement along the coast of England. Finally, on October 14, 1066, a great confrontation took place at Senlac Hill, the site of the famous Battle of Hastings. Harold Godwinson, as the King of England, faced the Norman army with the forces he had gathered here. From the north of England, from Westminster, the Anglo-Saxon army led by Harold arrived to clash with the Norman forces. The intensity and chaos of the battle could have inspired epics lasting centuries. Harold had established a strong defensive position. He had fortified the hill and the surrounding area effectively. However, William's army managed to overcome this defense with extraordinary military genius and strategy. The Normans weakened the Anglo-Saxon defenses through archery attacks from higher ground and cleverly executed maneuvers. One of the moments that changed the course of the battle was when Harold was struck by an arrow. According to legend, one of Harold's eyes was pierced by an arrow, marking a crucial turning point that influenced the battle's outcome. This moment signaled the end of Harold and the Anglo-Saxons' resistance. In the end, William's army emerged victorious, making the Battle of Hastings one of the most significant victories in history. This victory paved the way for William to ascend to the English throne, thus completing the Norman conquest. When William arrived in England, he achieved not only a major military victory, but also made profound changes to the country's social and political structure. After this victory, William took the throne, bringing England under Norman rule. This process signified a profound transformation in England's history. Norman rule radically altered England's aristocratic structure, legal system, and cultural framework. King William, after conquering England, established the new social structure and integrated Norman culture into the country. Dear friends, the story of the Battle of Hastings and the Norman conquest is not only about a war and conquest, but also about a historical period and social change. This event determined the fate of Britain and radically changed its cultural and political structure. We will continue to explore these fascinating pages of the past together, for history always contains a story, a legend, and a lesson. Dear friends, we are about to explore another turning point in history, marking the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. It's time to examine the end of Anglo-Saxon Britain and the Norman dominance that followed. This symbolizes not just the transformation of a kingdom, but of an entire culture. Now let's embark on a journey into the depths of this great change. As the echoes of the Battle of Hastings still linger in the air in 1066, this massive transformation in Britain's history was about to commence. Hastings was the site of the last stand of the Anglo-Saxons, and the Normans, having achieved victory on this land, opened the door to a new era. William the Conqueror had made a significant step in establishing dominance over these lands. He not only won a military victory, but also fundamentally altered Britain's social, cultural, and political structures. Norman rule signaled the end of the traditional Anglo-Saxon structure. With William's ascension to the throne, a process of reorganization began that affected all of England. Under this new administration, the Anglo-Saxon aristocracy was gradually rendered ineffective. Norman lords seized Anglo-Saxon lands and estates, and this new form of governance fundamentally changed Britain's social structure. The end of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms led to significant changes in the cultural fabric of these lands. The Normans brought their own language and culture to Britain. This cultural shift had profound impacts on language, arts, and even daily life. English became enriched with Norman words, creating a synthesis between the two cultures. This synthesis laid the foundations for modern English. Norman rule replaced the old Anglo-Saxon society with a new feudal structure. This new order redefined the relationships between feudal lords, serfs, and freemen. The Normans acquired vast lands throughout England, viewing these lands as their own property. Consequently, the local population had to adapt to the Norman style of governance. Anglo-Saxon villages and towns had to align with the Norman administration. Culturally, the Normans introduced new artistic and architectural styles to England. Castles and stone structures showcased the impact of Norman architecture in Britain. These buildings were constructed not only for military purposes, but also as symbols of the new administrative structure. The transition from Anglo-Saxon wooden and stone buildings to Norman stone constructions and castles marked a significant change in Britain's physical and cultural landscape. Norman dominance also affected the legal system in Britain. With the introduction of the feudal system, the understanding of law and justice was reshaped. The Normans added their own legal rules to the existing Anglo-Saxon laws, creating a legal framework that encompassed all segments of society. These new legal regulations further deepened Britain's socio-cultural structure and established new relationships and arrangements among different societal layers. In conclusion, the end of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms and the Norman rule represented a turning point in Britain's history. This change brought about not only a political transformation, but also a cultural and social evolution. The end of Anglo-Saxon Britain heralded the beginning of a new era, a new culture, and a new societal structure. These events profoundly impacted Britain's history, culture, and society, forming an important milestone in history. Dear friends, throughout history, many great civilizations have left deep legacies behind. Anglo-Saxon Britain is a part of these great civilizations, and the effects of this significant period in history have reached into the present day. Are we ready to delve deeply into this legacy and its impacts? Even while the echoes of the Battle of Hastings were still resonating in 1066, the rich legacy of Anglo-Saxon Britain was beginning to merge with the new Norman rule. The Anglo-Saxons' rich culture and social structures left indelible marks on the future of England, and these marks eventually became an integral part of Britain's cultural fabric. One of the most prominent legacies of Anglo-Saxon Britain is its impact on the language. Anglo-Saxon, blending with Latin and Norman brought by the Normans, formed the foundation of modern English. Many of the words we use today carry the legacy of this ancient language. So as you use these words in your daily life, you are actually walking on a bridge through history. Each word carries a touch of the Anglo-Saxon culture. However, language is just the beginning. The Anglo-Saxons also left a significant mark in the fields of art and culture. For example, Anglo-Saxon art includes jewelry adorned with complex and elegant patterns, stonework, and handmade items. This artistic understanding continued to influence the Normandy period and gradually became integrated into England's artistic heritage. The impressive stone and metalwork created by the Anglo-Saxons persisted during the Norman rule, and these traditional crafts became a part of England's cultural heritage. The legal system, a cornerstone of Anglo-Saxon society, is also part of this legacy. The Anglo-Saxons developed a highly advanced system of justice and law. This system was adopted by the Normans and became one of the cornerstones of England's legal structure. In particular, Anglo-Saxon land law and concepts of justice had a significant impact on the legal regulations of England during the feudal period. Another important legacy is the social structure and governance approach. The Anglo-Saxons emphasized the importance of village councils and local governance in their administrative systems. This structure was valued during the Norman period and gradually laid the foundation for modern local government systems. Even today, some traditions and practices in local governance carry the traces of these ancient systems. In terms of education and cultural values, the Anglo-Saxon legacy has left profound marks as well. The Anglo-Saxons made serious strides in education and learning, preserving and spreading knowledge through church schools and monasteries. This educational approach was adopted by the Normans and contributed to the development of England's educational system. Legendary works such as Beowulf are considered foundational texts of Anglo-Saxon literature and hold significant importance as part of England's literary heritage today. In conclusion, the legacy of Anglo-Saxon Britain has left deep impacts on the cultural and social structure of England. These impacts are evident in language, art, law, and social structure, and have persisted to the present day. The significant contributions of the Anglo-Saxons in history laid the foundations of modern England and made a major contribution to the country's cultural richness. England, with traces of this ancient civilization in every corner, is part of a story that comes from the depths of the past, and this story shows us how compelling and educational history can be. Dear friends, we have come to the end of a captivating story once lived in the depths of ancient Britain. Today we embarked on a comprehensive journey through the unique history of Anglo-Saxon Britain, its profound heritage, and the impacts of this heritage on our modern world. This journey has been a wonderful opportunity to uncover the rich stories of the past and bring to light the treasures offered by history. As we turned the pages of history, we discovered that the Anglo-Saxons were not only the kings and queens who once ruled Britain, but also a civilization that left deep impacts on our language, culture, art, and legal system. The legacies they left behind continue to be present in our daily lives, in every word, every artistic piece, and every legal framework. Looking into the depths of the past, we can see how deeply the Anglo-Saxons influenced these lands, leaving their mark on everything from the evolution of language to educational systems, from art to law. While tracing the effects of wars, kingdoms, and cultural transformations, we also highlighted how these elements came together to form a coherent mosaic of history. During this historical journey, the values that the Anglo-Saxons brought to Britain showed us not only a window into the past, but also the significance of a profound understanding that shapes our future. We realized once again that the past is not just a remnant of history but a heritage that shapes our present and future. As we approach the end of this deep narrative, let us remember how rich and instructive our history is. Traces of the past carry not only stories from ancient times, but also teachings that offer deep insights into life. History, beyond the place, culture, language, and understanding of justice of a people, reflects the shared heritage of all humanity. Today, while exploring the story of Anglo-Saxon Britain, we had the opportunity to share these great treasures that history offers us. I hope this historical journey has provided you with an experience that opens the doors to the past, illustrates the importance of our cultural heritage, and explores the depths of history. And so we come to the end of this grand historical tale. This journey into the depths of the past has strengthened our love and curiosity for history. Now we look forward to reconnecting with another historical story, new discoveries, and deeper insights. As we bring together these great historical narratives, let us once again remember our commitment to history by taking another step back in time. Dear friends, until we meet again in another chapter full of historical richness, goodbye. This journey through the traces of the past will continue to offer us inspiration and opportunities for learning. History is always a story waiting to be discovered, and by sharing these stories we build a bridge to the future in the light of the past.